Great.
Oh, okay, welcome everyone to the Kaktus reading for November. And this is a special occasion, the book launch of The Tiger Poet, New and Selected Poems by Amit Dahiyabadshah from New Delhi, India. We're really excited, Jules and I, to be publishing this book, our first international book, and Amit's first American publication. So Jules is putting information in the chat about pre-orders for the book. We're hoping to be able to start sending out actual copies in a week or two, but we're really close. And before we get to the main portion of our show, which will be Amit's reading, and then a short conversation, Q&A, and then the open mic, I want to read a poem, which I usually do to start these. And it's a poem I wrote recently, and that's called After Samhain. Samhain is the Gaelic or Irish name for November, and also associated with the Halloween, what we think of as Halloween, Samhain Eve. And we lost a good friend I've known for 32 years, Donna Odette, right before Halloween. And this poem came out of that. And she's a wonderful woman, very generous. After Samhain Eve, summer's left, spring is far off, and another old friend dead. She's gone, she's gone. Here in the high desert, even November's gloom is missing. Haze from the controlled burn, spindly sunflower carcasses, the once pitiless sun comforts our mammal bones, cozy, but not exactly jolly. So trying to capture a little of this time of year. Anyway, so we are now a year and a half into the Kaktus series. We started this in March of 2020. We used to hold the Kaktus readings at the brewery, Kaktus Brewing, in Bernalillo, New Mexico, right down the road. And we hope to get back there one of these days, but we will continue on Zoom for the near and medium future. Just say a few words about our reader and distinguished guest. Amit Dahiyabadshah grew up in rural North Indian state of Haryana, and now lives in New Delhi. He's very well known there for starting the Poetree, Poetree organization, which before the pandemic featured readings just about every day somewhere in the Delhi and New Delhi area, and published many books as well. Amit has read to audiences throughout Asia, Europe, and the US, and spent some time in Philadelphia as poet laureate of the Senior Environment Corps in Germantown, Philadelphia. And he was also poet in residence of the Global Constitution Forum in Philadelphia. He also edited and published a two-volume, 900-page anthology of Delhi poetry in 2008 called Here and Now. Has a lot of interesting recordings on YouTube, including a TED Talk, and a poem I hope he'll do today, the title poem, sort of the title poem, The Last Will and Testament of the Tiger, which he read at a televised fundraiser for conservation of the tigers and raised a lot of money in Delhi. So one of the silver linings, I guess, of this terrible 2 years has been Zoom and the opportunity to meet people and make really amazingly close friends around the world. And it was just about a year ago that Amit popped up in one of the squares on our Kaktus reading. And we were, of course, amazed, as you will be, by his poetry and his presence. And then we started seeing him also on the Cultivating Voices Live series, which is every week, Sandy Yanone's series, a wonderful Zoom series. And on Billy Brown's Fixed and Free open mic, Holly Wilson's Tortuga open mic, and other places. So anyway, it's been a joy, to finally be almost ready to publish this book. And I'm going to turn things over to Amit.
Thank you, John. And thank you to everybody on the other side of the pond on Zoom. One of the things that this COVID pandemic has done is exposed us to the power and grace of the human condition. The fact that we can, use the Zoom to read poetry to each other across time and distance has been such a wonderfully healing thing, especially for me. About a year ago, I ran into 4 very special Blythe and Irish spirits. The incorrigible chap who's become my younger brother, Bill Nevins, whose idea it was to do this book. John Roche, who is such a gracious host of poetry, and the lovely Jules, who hosts the print house, the publishing house that has brought out this book. Billy Brown, and last but not least, Sandy Yanone, who runs this fast-growing poetry group called Cultivating Voices. Thank you for everything. You literally came into my life and took over everything, including the healing process. And I cannot forget how much you've done for me in the last 1 year. The book is called The Tiger Poet, not because that I love tigers. It's because it celebrates the fact that we all have a little tiger in us. And that is why we are capable of anarchy in the face of evil and wrongdoing. It's why we have revolutions. It's why we have change. And I think the tiger spirit helps us to celebrate that. I want to start today's reading by giving you a poem in my language. You should know where I'm coming from. And so it's a tiger poem that is written in a cadence that can be sung. सुना है कोई शेर गुजरता है यहाँ से, सुना है कोई शेर गुजरता है यहाँ से, कि पानी पे हिरन खड़े हैं प्यासे, संध्या के अनहद में कोई पत्ता बोला है, 2 आंखों के तराजू ने हिरणों को तोला है, शेर और हिरण की तकदीरें मिली हैं, शेर और हिरण की तकदीरें मिली हैं कि दोनों को गुथ कर कुदरत ने लिखी हैं. संध्या का केसर, अमावस्या का काजल, शेर की शायरी करे जंगल को पागल. हवन कुंड आंखों में, मृग नैन पाए दर्पण, अपनी ही आहुति का ब्रह्मांड में समर्पण. हिरण की कुर्बानी पे शेर कुर्बान, हिरण की कुर्बानी पे शेर कुर्बान. इस भयानक सुंदरता की जय हो भगवान. सुना है कोई शेर गुजरता है यहाँ से, कि पानी पे हिरण खड़े हैं प्यासे. Um, one of the important things that have happened in my life, it's been a life of transitions, and to be honest with you, a life of having more luck than talent. And one of my talents is to allow the grace to manifest itself in my life. I'm an optimist. I believe that around the next turn, the next bend, something wonderful is just waiting to happen to me. And all I have to do is allow it to happen. And if it's not happening, it's not because I'm not because of any conspiracy against me. It's because I'm not allowing the grace to manifest itself. Maybe I'm not being kind enough or gentle enough. Maybe I'm not giving when I have less. That's what counts, what you give when you have less. I had bad signal 3 days ago, and it seemed like the Zoom wouldn't happen. And at this point, my good friend and mentor, Murad Ali Beg, who is about the most cultured, civilized man you're ever likely to meet, a writer of beautiful historical fiction, well-researched, author of many works. And I want you to introduce Murad to you. Murad, go on up and say hi to all my friends, the poets.
Wherever you are, whoever you are.
Poets, poetry lovers, and poet lovers. They're all out there. And
bless you all.
This is Murad Ali Beg. And really highly pedigreed and well-bred to give me this kindness of using his study as a studio for this Zoom. Thank you, Murad. Thank you so much. I also want to quickly introduce you to a young lady who did this thing on my face. Annie, come and say hi to everybody. Very sweet of her. That's Annie. She's Murad's secretary and has many talents. And we discovered one this morning that she can do makeup. She can make you look like a tiger. Thank you, Annie. My first offering is a poem called Delhi. A great poet called Nida Fazli, who passed away 2 years ago, told me that Amit, for something to be called poetry, it has to come from your experience. It has to come from your life. And I've taken this to heart, and I believe this to be very true. This is a poem about the city I live in, Delhi, where every twisting, turning, winding lane tells growing tales of mystery. Where every twisting, turning, winding lane tells growing tales of mystery, where any piece of fallen stone could be a piece of broken history. Where empires forged in blood and steel have stayed as saffron scent on kitchen air, where the paradox is everywhere, of an imperial city with the flavors of a village. Where a pavement dweller dares to tell you what your life holds, and his caged parrot picks your chances. Where a street urchin steals only the tune from your car stereo and dances, where there is still shade enough for shadeful glances, where a true love still waits to be found, with just 4 lines of good poetry. Delhi. When you come from my state, Haryana, which is agrarian, it's all farmers and soldiers. I belong to a community called the Jats. We think it stands for justice, action, and truth. But you ask anyone in Delhi, they'll tell you it stands for just avoid them. And that's good advice. It's being taken both by the Chinese PLA army on the northern front and the Pakistani army on the western front. And that's how we like it. So you come to Delhi, and one of the strange things you see is this ritual called begging. You don't see it in Haryana, but you see it in Delhi a lot. And people look down on beggars. But I've thought about this. It's not easy. It's not easy to beg. And there is begging because we have lost the economic concept of sharing. We don't share enough. That's why we have begging. It's called, in Buddhism, this thing we call begging is called bhiksha. If a monk is hungry 5 times a day, he must go out and beg 5 handfuls, because each time he begs, he surrenders some ego. And you cannot begin the journey of your spiritual evolution until you have surrendered your entire ego. Bhiksha, begging. I do not become a beggar when I invite you to open the granary of your heart. You do not become a giver and I am no taker when a small handful of food changes hands. Instead, when your fingers curl into a small cup of giving and my hand folds into a large bowl of receiving, we form a yantra of sacred sharing, a perfect mudra of 2 imperfect parts. When a single rice grain performs that long journey between us, it ends the famine between our souls, these empty, aching, and hungry hearts. My next offering to you is a very pretty poem, one that I like very much. When you come to Delhi, you discover something beautiful about India's diversity and cultural heritage. And this is the script of the language Urdu. It is an exquisite calligraphy, and you find it on monuments, you'll find it in old books, you'll find it upon the tongues of a very beautiful people who subscribe to the Islamic faith. And actually, it's a blend of Hindi and Persian, which is why it's so elegant and exquisite for poetry. The script of Urdu. Night stars impaled on black buck horns. Night stars impaled on black buck horns, the crescent curve of moon, sand dune, the sharpness of acacia thorns. Of these, the script of Urdu born. Oh, how the Marshreed celebrates every drop of wetness in the ink, long flowing strokes, and hesitates to contemplate and pause to think. They say that wisdom is the journey's wage upon the ivory prayer-beat trail of vanished herds. The pen caravans across the desert page, bearing the fruit and shade of chosen words. My parents were both freedom fighters, and my best friends believe that there should be a law against 2 freedom fighters marrying each other, because then this is what you get. I am compelled to immediately remove them from my friendship when they say that and make new friends, which is why I have such a friendly nature. And this poem is dedicated to my parents. It's called Whose Republic? You know, in Delhi, if you can hold a rally of about 5,000 people raising sexy slogans in the name of change, you can be the chief minister of Delhi. 10,000 people, you could become a minister in the government of India. And the day you can hire by 50,000 to 100,000 people, you can become a very big man in Indian politics. I suppose that's true for every country. But here's my take on whose republic? Who really owns the republic? This poem is as valid to you in the US as it is here. And it questions our lack of ownership. One by one, turn by turn, the cat and the bat and the crow and the rat have taken my city. One by one, turn by turn, the cat and the bat and the crow and the rat have taken my city. Insomnia rules the night and fear of the siren and the flasher rule the day. And that broad promised highway into the future is taken up by the motorcades of the politician, the shaker and mover, the power broker, the wheeler dealer, the spin doctor, the troubleshooter, leaving only a tiny lane for we the people to navigate our way precariously ahead. In 70 years, we the people have been broken and tamed. The have-nots have been bought with false promises. The haves have been bought with tax loopholes. The middle class is ritually slitting its own throat upon the sharp edge of the credit card. And the last of the freedom fighters are breathing bravely on life support systems. And we, the children of the freedom fighters, were doubly damned and doubly doomed. For we have not learned to look the other way or turn the other cheek. So shoot me thrice when my time comes. Once in the gut to balance the pain of so much hunger and unequal living. Once in the heart, for it was a fickle thing, and always too easily broken. And once in the head, for always thinking the impossible and dying to make it happen. I am here. I am here. We have the script of I am here, that poem. Oh, I think it's under the dining table in your room. But yeah, I'll do it later. Yeah, okay. This poem is actually a terror poem that I wrote when I was in Philadelphia. I met this father of a hunter on the R8 train into Philly. I was going there one winter morning, wearing a hunting jacket. I just arrived in the US, didn't have very warm clothes, and didn't realize it's not suitable attire for going in to read poetry. And this poem is called Terror of the Hunting Lad Gone to War. It was written around then, but I've dedicated this poem to the very, very handsome, magnificent son of Bill Nevins, his son Liam. And the poem's called Terror of the Hunting Lad Gone to War. There is terror when the long flight eastwards ends, and a harsh hand of desert heat takes you by the throat. And the ground crew of the plane carefully avoids your eye, and the load master avoids your face, as a cargo of long boxes arise to take your place for the long haul home. And the wind changes, bringing shining blue flies and a smell you remember from last winter's hunting only too well, when the freezer broke and the venison went throwaway bad. The same stench of rotting venison comes to you from the cargo of long boxes that has already taken your place for the long haul home. And the plane leaves the stench behind, gently caressing your face. It says to you, hey, wake up, it's time to play the game, to defeat the stench of rotting venison in a desert that offers no forest, no trees, no deer, only an endless hunting. Forgive me. John, you need to cue me how much more time I have. John?
You're good, Amit, for...
Yeah, maybe 10 more. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Here's a poem that I wrote when I was in the US. I went to this workshop, and a very fine and eminent poet was running that workshop, and he was asking everybody, what inspires you to write poetry? So like a good third world citizen, I was sitting in the last row in the corner. And when it came to my turn to tell him what inspired me to write poetry, I said, a sheet of double weight paper and a broad nib pen. And he burst out laughing along with everyone else, thought I was being a wise guy, and said, gentleman from India is confusing the instrumentation of writing with the inspiration of writing. And I said, no, I mean it. It's all I need, good paper and a pen. And he said, are you saying that if I give you paper and a pen, you can craft a poem? I said, absolutely. And he said, yeah, but it can't be your topic. I'll also give you the topic. I said, sure. So he said, well, write a poem as a farmer visiting America, why you are here. And this is the result. It's called I Am Here. I am here to claim a piece of this land for the old wooden plow, to somehow find a harvest also for the bird's nest, and to help establish the kingdom of the night crawler in broad daylight. I am here to reclaim this land for the return of a softness that will hold my woman's body gently as we seed her deeply together with the collective wisdom of our tribes. Even as she washes my work sweat with the liquid of her dreams, I am wiped by her wisdom and the tragic cloth of her experience. I am here to claim the land for the return of the small flavored fruit. I am here for the return of the twisted, tasty vegetable with no two exactly alike. I am here to take the land back from the lubrications of the machine oil and its savage taking by the machine. I am here for I must plant a naked human footprint upon your lovely fertile crust. Before your vicarious taste for the things of the moon, turn it all to gray moon dust. Yesterday they bombed an orchard in Kabul. Yesterday they bombed an orchard in Kabul. They said it was a lover's rendezvous. The heavens turned red with grief. The people came out of their homes in horror. Their palms upturned to the sky. Just 3 words upon their lips, please God, why? Some received a ruby of pomegranate in reply, and others an equal drop of lover's blood from the sky. You can't fight the war against terror unless you're also willing to fight the war against your own error. There were 2 pomegranate flowers upon the tree. She said, one is you and one is me. We left hers to ripen to fruit upon the tree. I carried mine into the battlefield. You won't believe the harvest it yielded. In the ambush against the militants, my RPG found a school bus of children instead, and it opened like a pomegranate. I shall carry the memory of that day and my flower to my grave. There are many shapes of terror. There's terror in many things. And I wrote this poem for young American school children to demonstrate that the terror lies in your own imagination as well, not just in the combo of planes and buildings, guns and bombs, men with beards and strange accents. And this is called Terror of the Ripening Mango. When the floodwaters went down, they left behind, high in a hollow in the fork of a tree, in a tiny pool of water, a small fish. When the floodwaters went down, they left behind, high in a hollow in the fork of a tree, in a tiny pool of water, a small fish. Trapped in the strange isolation, the fish finds comfort in the reflection of a mango. But the mango grows faster than the fish, at a pace that threatens to consume its space. Trapped between the hole in the tree and the hole in the sky, the fish discovers the terrors that lie in the ripening of a mango. There is the terror of the songbird, confiscated from a pet shop to be released by Maneka Gandhi before the media and the park. The tiny songbird desperately craves return to the sanctuary of its cage, for it has seen something that has escaped the eye of the innocent politician. The entire ceremony takes place beneath a great silk cotton tree, and on its highest branch sits a sparrowhawk, waiting to feast upon the tiny songbird's political freedom. There is terror in a rice tin. It is the terror of the young woman who married for love, but it did not last 9 months. but the children kept coming for 10 years until the day he finally left. Now there is terror in the third week of the month. Now there is terror in the second week of the month, when she reaches into her rice tin and her cup comes up half empty, and her children's eyes accuse her of marrying for love. A prayer for the war against terror. If the concept of God survives this war, then hear this prayer, O Lord. Your believers have put women and children to the sword. Must I too put down this pen and pick up a stone upon which to sharpen the steel nib so it cuts through blood and bone and the throat that utters poetry? It's not possible to read poetry to so many beautiful people without doing a love poem. And so this is called Love on a Lake in Kashmir. What, you ask, as my thirsty mouth draws water at the well of your throat? My body joins your body. We turn into a boat, laden deep with soft, sweet words that flutter beneath your skin like startled birds. Their movement rocks our entity. And as our life drifts from verse to verse, you get the rice grains of memory. I get the fragments of the universe. Is it time for me to do the tiger poem finally, Jules?
I think it's time.
Yeah, so I'll like to sign off with this signature poem of mine, which has actually disproved all those people who say there's money in poetry. There is if you keep it simple, there is if you keep it relevant, and there is if you keep it at a level conceptually where your audience can range from age 8 to 100. That poetry can sell, it'll always sell. I've written this poem in honor of the tiger, God's great creature, because I believe we will not save the tiger. At this moment, I probably have a blurred image because the sun is coming in through this beautiful picture window, and so it's not the system. It's nature and smog. This poem is called "The Last Will of the Tiger." In a good ecosystem, you have a wetlands that protects grassy plains and meadows, and you have deep forest. So the wetlands protect the grassy plains and meadows, and the meadows protect the deer, which is a creature of flight. They protect the deer from the tiger, and it is only when they can flee over open spaces that they can breed in large numbers. So we have taken the wetlands for rice, we have taken the grassy plains and meadows for wheat and sugarcane, and the deer, a creature of flight, is forced into the deep, dark forest where it cannot flee. So even the village dogs dine on venison like kings at night. And that is the predicament of the tiger. And that is why we will not save the tiger, because no matter what else we are doing with guns and with patrols and with rangers, the truth is, unless we can make the spiritual sacrifice of returning some wetland, some meadows back to the ecosystem, we will not save the tiger. And this poem is called "The Last Will of the Tiger." Because I believe as God's great creature, the tiger will write his will before he fades into extinction. When you have stolen my skin from my entity and removed the roar from my life, O hunter, wield the skinning knife with some grace, a little skill. For I too have killed many, many, many times, but every kill was a prayer and praise of the Creator. My movements were always quick, clean, merciful, such is the way of true believers. do you now hunter, slice, slash, and cut clean. I pray only that you leave no part of me behind to be eaten by the jackal and the hyena. For I have ruled this forest on behalf of the Creator himself, and there is no honor in a king becoming carrion. So take the sacred color from my coat, send it back to the maker of sunsets. So take the sacred color from my coat, send it back to the maker of sunsets. Take the darkness of my stripe and return it to the shadow and the undergrowth and the night, for that is where it is obtained. Take the white from the fur of my belly and send it back to a new ice age, that it return to avenge me. Send my roar back to my maker, that he fill the heavens with my rage at this shabby end, for a true king ordained by God himself. Send my claws to the young of the rich and the highborn, to save them from their own nightmares. Send my teeth to Tibet, that their aspirations for freedom find new teeth. Send my bones to China, that they find a cure for the fear that builds such great walls. Send my fat to Singapore, that they learn to make a balm that is mine, not merely a name. Send my shit to the alchemists, for that is the only substance they have not yet tried in their efforts to invent gold. Give my entrails to whoever shall have them, but hang on to my eyes, you puny murderer, that your tribe might know that you did not fell a creature beneath you, that I looked you in the eye and did not flinch when you shot me. Instead, I am turned away, released from the cancer of your footprint. Thank you.
Let's unmute.
Amit. Oh my
Amit.
goodness.
Magnificent.
Hey,
Thank you,
Amit.
Wow.
Yep,
Beautiful
good work, Dad.
voice.
Good work, Dad.
Dadu.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Touching on so many, like,
Karna, hi.
Hey,
Hi, hello. Hi, Vijali. Hi, John.
Hello, Amit. So
Oh.
beautiful.
Thank you. And so are you, my dear.
Well, we could
Bye.
Good to
listen
hear your
to you
voice,
all
Amit.
night.
Mm.
We could listen.
Kitty, thank you.
Ahmed, we listen to you with all of our heart.
Oh, Kate.
Hello, my love. Mwah.
Okay,
How are you?
wonderful.
Full of
How are
my
you?
heart.
Martina.
All of our hearts.
Martina, thank you. Thank you.
So I
Warren.
yeah.
Warren, my brother in Australia, thank you. Christopher Ox. and ML Joppa, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I know how busy you guys are. Hi, Max. Thank you for making time. Thank you. Very, very, very touched. Thank
Wisdom emerges through the words of your poems, Amit. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Max. You're very kind, brother. Lou. Thank you, Lou. You're a treasure too. You know, I have conversations with John Roche and Bill Nevins and about poetry, and I tell them that in all modesty, I believe that as a poet, we only write half the poem. And actually, the poem is the resonance between a throat that is trembling with a secret or sacred truth and an ear that is aching with thirst for that truth. The resonance between the two is poetry. It's not the words on the paper. That's only half the poem. So I want to thank you all for being here, for helping complete my poems. Thank you very much. Jagriti Chaudhary, thank you so much for making time. I know how busy you are. Holly, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
You're very kind.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Kitty
And,
Jaspreet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see a lot of friends here. Thank you so much. Amit, I want to just ask you a couple of questions maybe before we move on. How was it that you came to poetry? You came from a farming family. You moved to the city. At what point did you really start to think of yourself as a poet?
I don't know if you believe in miracles, John. Do you?
Oh, yes.
Do you believe in miracles?
Mhm.
Okay. About 25, 26 years ago, no, sorry, about 30, 31, 32 years ago, my mother took a fake medicine. There are people in this country who deserve to be found and hanged because they manufacture fake drugs. My mother took one of those meds and went into a coma. Luckily, my brother was with her at the time. He was a surgeon in the Navy, the Indian Navy, and they rushed her to a hospital. Oh, hi, Hamish.
Right.
And
How are you? Great to see you.
very well, thank you.
Yes.
So they rushed my mom to a hospital in Delhi, and I came back from a trek where I was, on a scientific trip with some botanists. I came back from the Upper Bhavani Plateau in South India, and I asked my brother, "What, how did it happen?" And he said, "Nothing. We were about to have tea in the morning, and she took this medication. 20 minutes later, she was in a coma." So I asked him if he remembered what the last thing that she said or did. She said, "I wish one of my children had taken up some creative or literary pursuit." And so I told my brother to go home and rest. And I asked the nurses for a piece of paper. And on that, I wrote a tiny little poem of just 4 lines. If you permit me, I'd recite it in Hindustani and explain it in English. It says, it's about the morning sounds that mothers make, because in our family, my mother and I would wake up early. I would wake up, she would wake at 4 and I would wake at 4:15. It's my biological clock. Even today, I woke up at 4:15. When I had COVID, the doctors noticed that I kept waking up at 4:15 every morning. They could set my clock by me. And so I wrote this little poem which says, चिड़ियों का उदय का गायन छलकते दूध की झाग कतर कतर कर काटे माए छप छप धोए साग जितना सरल जीवन अपना उतना सरल राग. And what it says basically is that, mother, the sounds that you make in the morning are the sounds that wake the sun, are the sounds that wake your sons. And the slosh, the swish of the broom, the slosh of the froth in the milking pail, the chopping of the greens, the mustard greens, for one of the great dishes of the world is called saag. It's mustard greens. And her name was Saral, which means simple. I said, these are the simple sounds that give meaning and anchorage to our lives. And therefore, making it possible for me to sing simple songs. And her name was Simple. It means Saral. Saral means simple. So I said, because you are so simple, I could make a living from simple songs. That's how I got into poetry. The doctors felt she wouldn't survive, but she lived for 10 years. After that, I moved to Delhi, gave up whatever I was doing to take care of her. And every day she'd give me topics and I would write poems for her. And when she finally went 10 years later, the poetry was on tap.
It's such a remarkable story. Wow.
I love that story.
I was wondering how is it that you came to go to come to Philadelphia for that?
I had started I was reading poetry in Delhi when a very beautiful young lawyer came to a reading and bought 2 copies of my book and took it back to Philadelphia with him. And someone from the Senior Environment Corps got a copy of that book. It was full of nature poetry. My village is on a river. And I think people who live by running water have an unfair advantage when it comes to doing poetry, because the water teaches you. It's no accident that the planet is 70% water and the human body is 70% water. That can't be a coincidence. So I believe that the resonance with water teaches us poetry. Just as The cadence of the mother's heart teaches us the rhyme scheme for children's poetry. You know, children's poetry across the world, they follow the cadence of Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. The dum, the dum, the dum, the dum, the dum, the dum, the dum. All the poetry in the world follows the same coincidence. So, um, sorry, I've lost track of the question.
Well, it was just about going to Philadelphia, but
Yeah.
you
So
kind of
so
explained, so they
this
invited you.
organization, one copy of the book wound up in the hands of an incredible man called Frederick Lewis, who is like a mountain of a chap. I come from a state of very, very tall, big people, but Fred is a mountain. He's a rock. He's huge, and I hope he's watching this. He promised to join the Zoom. Incredible. He used to head the Senior Environment Corps Center in the Park, Germantown, Philadelphia. He asked me to be his poet laureate of this group, and I was delighted to accept, and I learned so much from them.
Mhm.
They go out Sunday morning with 2 hampers. One has a little portable lab, the other one has a picnic breakfast, and they test the water of every river, lake, stream, and pond in their area. And if they find a difference, they spend the next week looking for the person causing the difference. And if that person changes the water back to normal by next week, fine. Otherwise, there's a big bloody fine because they informed the EPA. So they asked me to be their poet laureate, and I accepted.
Mhm. And also, can you tell us a little bit about the poetry organization that you started in Delhi?
John, I don't know if you missed that, but I think we just sold our first copy. Someone called Javri Chaudhary just said on the screen, she says, I can't wait to get my first copy.
Joel said several, that said there are several coming in. So I feel like telethon, keep on coming in. Anyway, but
Okay.
so tell us about the organization that you started.
You know, when I was in Philadelphia and I was honored by the Senior Environment Corps, I wrote to a friend of mine, and I make this offer this advice to everybody, that you have to have one older woman friend in your life. Everyone has to. Women have to have that, and men have to have that. Why? Because she is far more likely to tell you what you need to hear than anyone else. Everyone else, you press the right buttons and they'll tell you what you're dying to hear. But I wrote to her saying that, you know, there are so many Indians here, and when I was honored, not a single Indian face in the audience. So she wrote back to me saying, you should be ashamed of yourself. You go to the other side of the world to receive an honor for yourself. In your own country, poetry is dying. Which Indian poet has seen your face at his or her reading? And you're there in Philadelphia waxing eloquent about how sad you feel that you couldn't see an Indian face. You know, I came back to India and I realized it was true. I went to attend one poetry reading where in a hall of 300 people, there were only 5 people. I went to a book launch where no one had showed up, and he was a brilliant poet, a man called Rakshat Puri. I went to another reading where in a bigger hall there was people were talking amongst themselves, and there was no poetry happening. So I decided that I would do something about it. And because I have a background in farming and agriculture, you know, I've learned that to do something difficult, you must break it down into small, measurable goals. So I gave myself 3 goals. I said, I will make sure that the Delhi National Capital Region of Delhi gets 30 readings of poetry a month across the NCR, across the National Capital Region. That I will honor 100 contemporary poets as the living treasure of Delhi. And by the year 2024, enable 100 poets to earn a taxable income from poetry, also from poetry. And I'm happy to inform you that we've done the first. We did 1 reading a day for 10 years. Now there are as many as 300 groups in Delhi. And on some days, you're spoiled for choice. There are as many as 80 or 90 readings per day. And so we've come a long way. And instead of 100 poets, now Delhi Poetry has 3,500 poets who've all been featured, who've all been given given exposure. And we're working on the third, and I think it'll get done. Especially if you buy more books.
That certainly is something that New Mexico should aspire to. That's quite amazing. Yeah.
We actually set two world records, I think, John. One year in 2008, we brought out an anthology of 2 volumes called Here and Now, which is almost 1,000 pages of poetry and featuring about more than 100 poets. And it cost what in India is a large sum of money. I don't think any poetry book has ever been sold for 1,000 rupees. And we sold 837 copies in one night. And Johanna Dime has ordered her copy, she says, after the program. Thank you, Johanna. Love you for that. And
thank you. Thank you for coming to us. We are so—
my pleasure, Johanna, my pleasure.
We are so enriched, and that is a little reward to us for putting up with the pandemic, that through Zoom we have been able to enlarge our circle, and we are very enriched by your presence. Thank you.
And I'm blessed, Johanna. Thank you so much for being here. And for having such gentle and kind ears for poetry. Thank you. So I believe we're now ahead of the curve, and this is going to happen. I want an empowerment of poets to take place on the planet, because the politicians are ruling by default and they lack sensibility. And it's only when some of us are empowered enough through networking that we will place poets in positions of political power at the center where change can happen. John, my belief is that for change to happen, sustainable change, equitable change, just change, for it to happen, everyone has to contribute to change, not just the politicians. So how can poets make a difference to the process of change? And I believe it is by getting more and more people to write their first poem in life. You see, change will not come from great poets and great poetry. It will come from more poets and more poetry. We will reach a critical mass, and then people will stop passing by a bad thing happening or a sad thing happening and not getting involved. Today, we just turn our face and move on, But if we have enough poets in society, that will not happen. I believe there should be a policy that every child has to write one poem in his school term and perform that poem. And that poem should be part of a record of the school's competence and capability. We should all work towards this, that our schools, the students have to create one poem. They can take help. Take the help of neighbors, parents, friends, anybody, even dead poet societies. Take the help. But create one poem and perform it on stage and record it. Because once you have a little poetry in your life, many of the evil things that happen in society today will cease to happen.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to need to appoint you to chair the United Nations of Poets. Yeah, thank you so much, Amit. And again, the book is The Tiger Poet, New and Selected Poems, and there are a lot of new poems in this. One of the things about Amit is, COVID or no COVID, he writes almost every day. I mean, it's all good, and it's an amazing. And we are only seeing a fraction, obviously, of his recent output. Anyway, So thank you so much. Let's get another round of applause if we could.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you.
Thanks to all.